in the objects of the senses. Yata udbhavam, wherefrom they generated. Bhuta adhina, by the five elements. Amuni, amuni, all those sense objects. Utkrishya, taking out. Mahati, in the Mahatattva. Atmani, unto the ego. Sandadhe, amalgamated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects, according to their respective positions, and he also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahatattva. Purport. In respect to the ego, the total material energy is understood in two parts, one agitated by the mode of ignorance and the other agitated by the mode of passion and goodness. Due to agitation by the mode of ignorance, the five gross elements are created. Due to agitation by the mode of passion, the mind is created, and due to agitation by the mode of goodness, false egoism or identification with matter is created. The mind is protected by a particular type of demigod. Sometimes the mind, manaha, is also understood to have a controlling deity or demigod. In this way, the total mind, namely the material mind, controlled by material demigods, was amalgamated with the senses. The senses, in turn, were amalgamated with the sense objects. The sense objects are forms, taste, smells, sound, etc. Sound is the ultimate source of the sense objects. And all of them are ultimately amalgamated in the sky. The creation is so arranged that cause and effect follow one after another. The merging process involves amalgamating the effect with the original cause. Since the ultimate cause in the material world is Mahatattva, everything was gradually wound up and amalgamated with the Mahatattva. This may be compared to Shunyavada or voidism, but this is the process for cleansing the real spiritual mind or consciousness. When the mind is completely washed of all material contaminations, the pure consciousness acts. The sound vibration from the spiritual sky can automatically cleanse all material contaminations, as confirmed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. We need only take the advice of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to cleanse the mind of all material contamination, and in this way be considered the summary of all these difficult verses. Can I read this again? The sound vibration from the spiritual sky can automatically cleanse all material contaminations, as confirmed by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Cheto Darpana Marjanam. We need only take the advice of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and chant the Hare Krishna mantra to cleanse the mind of all material contamination. And this may be considered the summary of this difficult verse. As soon as the whole material contamination is washed away by this process of chanting, all desires and reactions to material activities become immediately vanquished, and real life, peaceful existence begins. In this age of Kali, it is very difficult to adopt the yogic process mentioned in this verse. Unless one is very expert in such yoga, the best course is to adopt the ways and means of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Thus, one can gloriously become freed from all material contamination by the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just as life in this material world, has its beginning in material sound, Similarly, a spiritual life has its beginning in this spiritual sound vibration. Hare Krishna. Om Ajnana-timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Once again the verse. Indriyeshu manastani tanmatreshu yathodbhavan bhutadinamuni utkrishya mahati atmani sandadhe. He amalgamated the mind with the senses and the senses with the sense objects according to their respective positions, and he also amalgamated the material ego with the total material energy, Mahat Tattva. Hare Krishna. So, translation ist, Übersetzung ist da, ja? Vielen Dank. So, this is a very interesting part of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We have Prithu Maharaj. We heard so many things about Prithu Maharaj, about his glories, deeds, teachings, and also the teachings he received from the four Kumaras. And he's an ideal example also in deity worship and as a king. And now at the end of his life, he is practicing detachment and also the process of yoga, mystical yoga, also known as Ashtanga Yoga. And the process of yoga ultimately has the purpose of reconnect the Atma, the self, with the Supreme Lord, with transcendence. This is the same meaning actually as religion. Religar in many languages, like in Portuguese, for example, ligar means to connect something or to call somebody, you know. Say, me liga, you call me. So, religio means to connect, you know. In the same way, like yoga means to connect. You know? So this is actually the spiritual meaning of religion also. Of course, religion also nowadays is in disrepute because it was misused, you know, for wars or to oppress people. But the idea of religion is, of course, to connect the self with the individual self, or us, with God, ultimately. And yoga has the same purpose, but yoga is unique in the sense that there are so many different types of yoga. So many different types of yoga. Each chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is a yoga. Has a different name, a different Sankhya yoga, etc. So what we are hearing now is part of Sankhya yoga. So you could say that all these yoga processes also intermingle, overlap, you know. Many aspects which are prominent in one is also prominent in another, even the direction might be a little bit different. And in the process of Ashtanga Yoga, certainly Sankhya Yoga is also part. In the same way as in the process of Bhakti Yoga, also Sankhya Yoga is an important part. And also, of course, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna talks about Sankhya Yoga in the 2nd chapter. And in essence, the Sankhya Yoga means understanding the nature of matter, means understanding the nature of this material body, and understanding the nature of the mind, the intelligence, and the false ego, and understanding the nature of the soul. You know, ultimately, Sankhya Yoga counts, I think, how many elements? 24 elements. 24 material elements, and then the spiritual soul and God. You know? So, and there's actually also a Sankhya process which is atheistic, which only focuses on analyzing the material elements without, analyzing or acknowledging the presence of God or the soul. But of course, for us, clearly, Sankhya Yoga is complete when you, after transcending and understanding this material body, you can connect with God. And in simple terms, we can understand that by devolution, so you could say in one sense we believe in devolution. We also believe in evolution of consciousness, through samsara, from one life to the next, we are always evolving. There is a process of, change. The Bhagavatam describes that animals, for example, they are, you could say, each animal life is like a level, video games, maybe you play some video games, there's different levels you can cross, and the higher the level, the more complex usually it becomes, So in a similar way, simple living forms, when you manage this living form, let's say as a cat, then you're ready for the next level, maybe a panther or something, So like that, it is described that consciousness actually is naturally evolving, and the human form of life is a crossroad. So in the human form of life, we can elevate ourselves to the highest perfection, like described here, completely transcend the material existence. You can also just elevate yourself, to higher planetary systems, places of more comfort, longer lifespan, material enjoyment, accumulate good karmas, you could say. Or you can also degrade yourself again. If you behave just, following the urges, of the body, you might degrade yourself actually. Because the urges of the body technically are animalistic instincts, eating, sleeping, mating, defending. And if we just follow those four urges, or instincts without discrimination, without purity, without self-regulation and discipline, it is sure that you will degrade yourself. You'll become unhealthy, you'll become, probably aggressive or, creating violence, destruction, etc. So naturally there is some karmas attached to it, but also the living form that will fit your consciousness will not be human anymore. So yes, and this material devolution, the idea is basically that everything emanates from a spiritual source, or at least a subtle source. So how subtle is the question? We of course would agree that the most subtle element would be the Supreme Lord Himself. Is the most pure and transcendental and subtle. Subtle means maybe difficult to perceive directly, but actually all-pervading. Very powerful. That's subtle. The definition of subtle. And then within the material world, we have also subtle elements. Like the false ego is considered to be the most subtle. Then less subtle is the intelligence. Less subtle than the intelligence is the mind. And those three, ego, intelligence, and mind, are the subtle body. They make up, some people call it also astral body. But this subtle body is actually who you actually are, you could say, within the material world. It's your consciousness, your accumulated karmas. And this subtle body is like a ball of clay. And depending on what impressions are put into this ball of clay, it will change shape. So this piece of clay is constantly changing shape according to the experiences we make in this world. The first time you eat, when you give babies, lemon, or sugar, it's like deep impression, and if your child tastes sugar, then it knows, then it wants more and more sugar. So like that, we create impressions. They're called samskaras. So all of these samskaras create impressions, and of course there is a whole science, how to create positive impressions at very important, steps in life. they're also called samskaras, like vivaha samskara, for most people very important to get married. But there are so many other samskaras, at birth, before birth, cutting hair, going to school, ultimately dying, also quite a samskara. And all of this samskaras change the shape of our consciousness. And this a ball of clay, because it's constantly changing shape, there are different bodies that attach to that shape. Different bodies that fit that shape. So reincarnation is not a Russian roulette, because sometimes people think, how can you believe in reincarnation? Such nonsense, What, you die and maybe you're born as a worm or maybe you're born as an eagle. I mean, it is fully a reflection and a direct consequence of your actions and your activities and the consciousness that you have. Interestingly, there is quite a few people who have near-death experiences. You might have heard about near-death experiences. So many people have near-death experiences. Either after an accident, or while having an operation. And many people who have this near-death experiences, they remember it, and when they come back to life, they all, without fail, describe the same which is described in the Vedas, that at the moment of death, you will see your entire life in a recap, in a very fast, like a very fast time lapse, of your entire life, backwards. And that, of course, will give you a accumulated impression of how you lived in this life. That molds finally your consciousness, and then that consciousness you die, or come back to life. But some people who come back to life, they have this memory, And so yes, the moment of death is crucial, because at the moment of death, we hear in the Bhagavad Gita, the consciousness that we have at the moment of death determines your next birth. So that's the idea of reincarnation. And you could say the logic behind it is also that this consciousness, your mind, desires, thoughts, feelings, emotions, ideas, convictions, identifications, all of that is a lot of energy. You are active and you do things because you are convinced of something, or because you have a very strong desire for something. The body is merely the vehicle we use to do that. But the energy and the impetus is not coming from the body. Actually, the energy and impetus is coming from the mind, intelligence and ego. And therefore, we can understand that the subtle body is actually very old. The subtle body is not maybe you are 20, 50, 60, 20 years old, 30 years old, 40 years old. But this is only the age of the body. The subtle body is very, very old. But even older than the subtle body is the soul. The Atma is eternal. The Atma has no beginning and no end. But in comparison to this, short physical manifestation we have here, the subtle body already is actually much more who we really are. In the subtle body, impressions not only from this life, meaning samskaras, not only from this life, but from all past lives are also stored, or have left their impression. Nrsimha Bhagavan ki jai. So, therefore we hear in the Vedas that the physical body only lasts for 100 years. 100 years. And it's relative, depending what kind of body you have, what animal you are, what species you are born into. Your lifespan might be longer or shorter, but relatively speaking, because time is relative, you live 100 years. We all live 100 years. In our 100 years, we can witness the life of many dogs or insects, and in the 100 years of a tree, many empires might come and go, Many big trees, there are still many trees that were alive when Julius Caesar was on the planet, or Jesus Christ, or Krishna. In Vrindavan there are trees, which are very, very ancient, and they're supposed to have been alive when Krishna was there, 5,000 years old. And I think in Greece, at least the recorded oldest tree is an olive tree, 8,000 years old. So like that, depending what kind of body we have, the physical body might be lasting longer or shorter. But in any case, at the moment of death, you will move into the next species. If you are in the animal kingdom, in the plant kingdom or insects, the evolution of consciousness is considered to happen naturally and automatically in an elevating process. But like I mentioned before, the human form is the crucial moment where you can either transcend matter, elevate yourself, or degrade yourself. And understanding Sankhya Yoga is very crucial and important. Even Srila Prabhupada is saying here that in this age of Kali, it's actually very difficult. And unless you are very expert at this yoga, his recommendation is we should follow the recommendation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to chant the Hare Krishna mantra in Harinam Sankirtan. But Sankhya Yoga is very powerful because it gives us a very clear reflection of our psychology also. If you want to practice meditation or yoga, or devotional service, one should understand, how do my senses work? How does my mind work? What is the ego? What is the mind? And how they do interact. So if you have an understanding of how they interact, how they are connected to each other, you can realign it. You can control also. At the culmination of Sankhya Yoga, after you understood exactly how this devolution, how from a subtle source you became fully, grossly manifested in a material body, you start undoing this conditioning manifestation. You undo it. And I've read it a few times, but I also don't know how it works exactly. If you read the previous verses, you will hear. But also in this verse, amalgamate, at the next step, we will amalgamate the mind with the senses, So how do you do that? How do you amalgamate the mind with the senses? It means that I don't know the exact dictionary definition of amalgamation, but it means that that they become dissolved, You dissolve the existence of one into the other, so that at the end nothing is left. That's the idea. It's like you get lost. You get lost somewhere. And you're like, okay, wait a second, where do I am? And then you try to go back. How did I get here? Then oh yeah, I remember this stone. I remember that tree. Oh, I remember that lake. Okay, now I can see, there's this village, where I was before. So you backtrack, where you got lost. And that's the idea of Sankhya Yoga. We have been so engrossed in this material reality, so we try to undo mechanically this material situation. So the question, of course, now might arise, how is it that the recommendation of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is simply Shri Krishna Sankirtanam. Just by the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra, the same result can be achieved. Srila Prabhupada is describing here. And in the last sentence, he explains it also. And he says, just as life in this material world has its beginning in material sound, similarly, a spiritual life has its beginning in this spiritual sound vibration. So, the same principle, you could say, as you become conditioned within matter, from sound, or ether. Ether is the element connected to sound, and from sound, you can basically, when you are deep asleep, only sound can wake you really up. It says the ear is always alert. And also, just by hearing a description, of something, you can fully experience it. If it's a good description. Also, you hear a very sad song, you might start crying. You hear a very aggressive, how you call it, incendiary speech. We have to kill them. They did this to us. Then you become super angry and fired up. To maybe kill. So sound is very powerful. It molds us. It moves us. In a very powerful way. It's the source of material existence. And in Sankhya Yoga, of course, is explained step by step how from sound, all the elements ultimately are manifested. So in a similar way, by connecting with transcendental sound, we can focus on developing our spiritual identity. So the analogy that is given in this connection is the analogy of an ink, a glass full of ink. You have a glass full of ink, dark black ink. So Sankhya Yoga is trying to get rid of the ink. And Prabhupada also says it seems like Shunyavada or voidism. And Sankhya Yoga has this idea of voidism. You have this glass, you have to get rid of this ink because this ink is a problem. It's very dark and dirty. So you start, putting it out and washing and washing and washing and washing, and all your hands and everything is full of ink. Whatever you touch, and then you have to wash your hands also. Then all your clothes, everything is full of ink. A big cup of ink can, tinge a lot. So trying to clean up, the ink can be quite challenging. Until finally, all your hands, all your clothes, and the cup, everything is clean. All ink is gone, Everything is void and clean. This is one method. Another method is you just leave the ink glass there. Okay, there's ink. I want, let's say milk. I want to drink milk out of this cup. So if you have enough milk, it's just an analogy. We don't promote wasting milk. But you can start pouring milk into that cup. And that means you just focus on the spiritual activity, and in the beginning the ink is going to be mixed. You don't touch the ink, you don't get too involved with trying to solve the ink problem. You just focus on the milk. You make sure you always have milk, meaning spiritual activity or chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. And as you keep pouring milk, at one point, the milk will fully have replaced the ink. So that's the idea. We should focus on, or the more convenient, recommendation is to focus on developing our spiritual nature, by the chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. The Hare Krishna mantra, of course, is very powerful and unique because it is composed of direct names of the Lord, and it's also not a prayer, it's not a glorification, it's a direct call. It's very personal, It's Hare Krishna. It means vocative, means as if you're standing in front of the person. You're calling the person, Hare Krishna. And Hare is the universal mother, In the material world, it's Durga, Or in a more fierce form, it might be Kali Devi, Lakshmi, Sita, or ultimately for us, Srimati Radharani. Hara, the universal mother, and we are taking shelter of her to re-engage us or give us shelter in the spiritual reality, in the service of Krishna. So when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra, we are trying to focus our consciousness to take shelter of Radharani, take shelter of the spiritual energy, so that we again can be, within the spiritual reality, or in other words, also be protected from the material consciousness. By nature, our material mind, our ego, our desires, our body, our senses are connected, attracted, have some involvement, within this material world. So it is natural that our mind and senses will be drawn back to material reality. So the process of chanting Hare Krishna in a, conscious meditation is that you try to avoid, being distracted by focusing on the sound vibration. The more you focus on the sound vibration, you are able to transcend the pulling or distractions of external material reality. And this is not negation of this world. This is a positive engagement in realizing how actually everything we have, everything we are, ultimately has a spiritual source and is also connected with the spiritual reality. So we're not trying to get rid of anything, we're trying to reconnect everything with Krishna. Hare Krishna. So I don't want to make it much longer, but of course if there are some questions, comments, we can discuss. Maybe you could give him the mic. Sanjay Prabhu. Geht nicht? Jetzt geht's.
You mentioned in one point we have these animalistic tendencies: eating, sleeping, mating, defending, and and I was thinking that how to say. Anyway, I felt there's a connection with that also, but if there's aggression, then we aspire to offend generally.
Mm-hmm.
So, and on a subtle level also, I would say. So, if there is a situation that we socially we are supposed to look up to someone who is to be accepted as a greater personality, and maybe also by our values we want to appreciate a person as superior, and we do note that this person is superior in many ways, and then something happens which puts us off very much. How can we, what is your thoughts on this? Like, how shall we be very respectful and appreciative of whatever, like, gold we found in receiving from there?
Mm-hmm. You should take gold even from the toilet, said Srila Prabhupada once. So maybe that's one, And also another famous example is Dronacharya at the end of their education sent Yudhishthir and Duryodhana into the world, and he told Duryodhana, bring a good person, and he told Yudhishthir, bring a bad person, and they both came empty-handed back, because Duryodhana would always see a fault in somebody, They're okay, but no, actually they're actually, everybody was bad, And in the mind of Yudhishthir Maharaj, everybody was good, because he could see, they maybe have some fault, but actually they're good, So, I think that's a very good example, that it's, we should not be naive or allow somebody to, especially not behave, in a wrong way towards others. Then we should, be brave and protect or speak up. But if it's just something you observe, which you might, find, unfitting to their status and character, like the bees, focus on the positive sides, I would say if it doesn't have a direct effect on your spiritual life or harm for you or for others, then you might have to talk to an authority, so it's cleared. But as a general, you could say, appreciation, I think you could count their good qualities and counterweight it, like that. It's like you don't criticize somebody who's dirty if they're already standing in the shower. That's also an important point, that if somebody is, dirty and not willing to take a shower, it's a different thing. But if somebody is in the shower already, then, just wait a little bit, Even this last thing also will be washed, Maybe he's missing this, he's washing everywhere, but he's back, he cannot get there yet, There's a spot in the back, He can see also maybe, We all have blind spots we don't see about our character, how we behave. But yeah, we can expect that if the person is, active in Krishna consciousness, we should have the patience that it will be eventually also, that also will be cleansed. So. Yeah, if it's harming somebody and if it's creating disharmony or or disturbing you directly, mentally or physically, then for sure you should talk to an authority and clarify the situation. We should not tolerate. That's what there's the Vaishnava etiquette, and sometimes it's perceived that it's like something what he told me. I'm not sure I want to tell, because if I tell, then the person knows that I told, and then the person is annoyed with me that I told, that he did this or that. But yeah, the idea is to not confront, especially if somebody's elder, not confront the person directly, but talk to an authority or a spiritual master who can, give guidance again. Because most devotees, if they're sincere, if they get, genuine correction, not aggressive, also not trying to put them down, but correction. Most people who are sincere would be happy. It's like, oh yes, I didn't. Maybe you're conscious already that maybe you already have a bad conscience, that you behave in a wrong way, or maybe you have a blind spot, that you're not even aware that you actually had. Mm-hmm. Mm. Yep. Mm-hmm. Well, that's an extreme example, of course. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there is this principle. If you don't know what to do, or if you get an instruction which is difficult to follow, or you're like, should I really do this? It's good to consult with 7 other senior people. Like if somebody is very, you have to do this. That's how it's done. But you feel maybe not sure. Or it seems a little bit, is it applicable now for me like that? Then yeah, it's good to seek advice from additional, say 7 brahmanas. You ask 7 brahmanas. Also, if you have, that's also I think mentioned usually in connection to some intuition you might have, or some dream that you might have had, and you're not sure, should I follow up on this or not? Then it's also recommended to ask additional authorities. Yes, and especially if something like extreme, like Parashuram's example, for sure ask a few people before, Hare Krishna. Yes, what's your name? Huh? Harsh. I think the mic is not working, no? I can repeat the question also. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mahatattva is something which is beyond my direct experience, but from what I understand, the Mahatattva is all the material elements, combined. The source, the Mahatattva, the source of all material reality. And this Mahatattva, and especially in the 3rd canto, there's a few descriptions. Throughout the Bhagavatam, there's a few descriptions, and they vary a little bit, although the emphasis is a little bit different. But in principle, the Mahatattva is, material energy in an inactive state, And then the Lord glances upon the Mahatattva, and then time starts. Then Kala, Mahakala. So therefore it says that the Lord, by his glance, impregnates material energy, and sets it in motion, And then the reverse, the devolution is described. How from the subtle Mahatattva, all the different elements become manifested, all the senses, everything we perceive in this world becomes manifested. So Mahatattva, one devotee described it as the original khichdi. You know? It's everything combined and completely cooked. You cannot distinguish anymore. What is rice? What is zucchini? What is dal? You know. So yes, that's the Mahatattva, and Mahakala is Krishna himself. You know, Mahakala. Actually, in the Prabhavali, we have this arch which is behind the Murti, Prabhavali, and on top of the Prabhavali is this Kriti Mukha, this like lion face, like this, fierce face, and this is Mahakala. You know, it's also considered to be a form of Shiva, because of course Shiva is Mahesha, he's the lord of the material world, you know, where time is controlling everything. And but in the Gita, Krishna says, Kalosmi, I am time, you know, the destroyer of everything, you know. So yes, Mahakal is Krishna himself, and Mahatattva is material energy, you know, which is activated by his glands. Yes. Yes, Mahatattva is material energy. And Mahakal is Krishna himself, it's time. And the description, you can read in the third canto, the exact sequence I don't remember, but I think Krishna glances upon Mahatattva, and then time, the time factor is a crucial element, you know. And I cannot tell exactly at one point, but I think it's, I remember, as far as I remember, Krishna glances upon material energy, and then the time factor comes into motion. Kapila Muni describes in detail this Sankhya. Hare Krishna. Mataji? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, nice. Yeah, and so Mataji asked, some people say this person is a very old soul, you know, and what's the connection to the subtle body, the soul? I think when people say that this is a very old soul, they mean is somebody who is very realized, you know. That's what they usually mean, is somebody who has, you know, somehow deep realization or wisdom, usually. So, but like from our understanding, you know, being an old soul might not necessarily be a good credential, you know. It might mean you've just been a very long time conditioned in this material world, you know. So, but of course we can, you know, if we use the same terminology, a very old soul, you know, somebody who for a very long time is, you know, already self-realized, you know, like, you know, if somebody comes to this world already, you know, in a very elevated consciousness, so you can assume that in the previous life already this person was, you know, conscious, you know, and now it's completing its journey, you know. So in that sense, maybe an old soul who has, you know, longer memory, you know, or and not limited like most of us. So in that sense, it could make sense again. And the subtle body lasts as long as you live within this material world, of course. You know, as long as we are within this material world, the subtle body is only changing shape and form, but it does not die. You know? The subtle body does not die. And a good example of this is Brahma himself. At one point, his subtle body becomes contaminated because he has a very like lusty desire, you know. So he consciously gives up this gross body and replaces it with a new body, you know, while like within a lifetime, basically. And the reason is because his body is based on intelligence. You know, he doesn't have a gross body like ours that is dependent on the gross elements. His body is made of intelligence, so he was able to give up this body which was contaminated and resume, you know, a new body. But yes, the subtle body, as long as the material existence. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mhm. Mhm, mhm. Mhm. Mhm, mhm. 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 Interesting, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't dare to speculate too much in this direction, but I mean, in one sense, it is said Anadim Ananta Rupam. The Lord appears in so many places, in so many forms, always. Um, but at the same time, Srila Prabhupada always warned us, to take, self-appointed incarnations too cheaply. One Srila Prabhupada used to say, now of course India is exporting more IT people, but Prabhupada used to say, the biggest export of Indians is fake gods and gurus. So there is plenty also, and Srila Prabhupada, spoke from first experience, and so yeah, I would be careful, But of course there are, there might be a Shaktavisha avatar, I don't know. Yeah. And there are very, empowered yogis for sure, other traditions. Yeah, but I don't know. Anything else? Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.